Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Scotland and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel once before. So the last review that I did from these guys actually came quite recently relative to this one. The beer that we tried was really quite nicely done, I have to say. A very popular style, but I do think I drank that beer just a little bit too fresh. I maybe should have left it to mellow out a little bit longer, but it still was really quite nice. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is a style that I haven't tried from this brewery before. It is still quite a popular style of beer, although it's not too easy to find at this ABV these days. And the particular sub-style that it is one that you don't often see brewed by Scottish breweries. And that was the main reason that this one kind of caught my eye. The other thing to think about, of course, is that this one is at the darker side of the spectrum, whereas the last beer we tried from this brewery was at the lighter end of the spectrum. And having a look at these beers from these two ends will always give you a good idea of what a brewery is all about. And these guys do certainly seem to be very well rounded when it comes to brewing different styles and things like that. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then we are going to head over toward Glasgow, which is to the west of me here in Clackmannanshire. We're going to go to the northwest of the city centre out to Paisley, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Two Towns Down Brewing. So this particular beer is called Will It Be This Way Forever? It comes in at 7% ABV, and they're describing this one as an American stout. So yeah, you don't see all that many beers brewed by Scottish breweries that are called American stouts. Stouts in Scotland tend to be, big imperial things at about 10% ABV, or they tend to be the more traditional kind of 5%ers and things. It's not often you'll find a 7% stout actually, especially one that's described as an American stout. Probably the beer that this one kind of reminded me of a little bit when I was buying it was the Riptide from Brewdog, and that was one of my favourite Brewdog ones back in the day when craft beer was sort of breaking through in Scotland, if you like. But yeah, this was actually the first beer that I bought from Two Towns Down, but I just never got the chance to review it until I came back to Scotland this time. So this can is actually a couple of months old, and I bought the IPA that I reviewed in the last one, the Televised Minds, quite recently. So yeah, I'm glad that I'm finally getting around to having a little look at this one, because this one, when I bought it, was really quite interesting to me. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. The Will It Be This Way Forever, a 7% American stout from Two Towns Down Brewing in Paisley, over toward Glasgow. So yeah, let's crack on and see what the beer has in store for us. As always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Two Towns Down Brewing before, and we will no doubt add some more to that list at some point in the near future when I get back to the motherland. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Scottish playlist along with a number of other things, and you can of course check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some really interesting things up on the channel at the moment. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you once again a little bit about Two Towns Down Brewing. So, Two Towns Down Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Paisley, just kind of to the northwest of Glasgow, and the brewery was founded back in 2019 by Sandy McKelvey. So he originally studied brewing and distilling at Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh, quite a famous programme they have these days over there within the brewing community. But after this, he went on to work for the Hanging Back Brew Pub on Lothian Road in Edinburgh. He worked at Black Isle Brewery just to the north of Inverness, Fallon Brewing near Stirling and Kippen, and then he worked for 71 Brewing up in Dundee as well. But after gathering more than a decade of experience, he decided to return to his hometown of Paisley and found his own brewery, which happened to be the first one in Paisley ever. But for the first few years he was Gypsy Brewing, but then at the end of 2022 they moved into their own premises at Backsnedden Street and started brewing on their own equipment. And apparently his mum Liz helps with the daily running of the brewery, including the brewing itself. But apparently when he was working for other breweries, making his own beer and doing deliveries, his family would say to him that he was just 2 steps away from his goal of opening a brewery in Paisley, and this was how the phrase 2 towns down was born, and he used this as the brewery name when he got his own project up and running. But the artwork on the cans is a Paisley pattern, which, as I mentioned in the last video that we did from these guys, I thought it was, you know, if I was to see this without knowing what it was, I would think it was some sort of like Persian rug pattern or something like this. I hadn't heard of Paisley pattern before. But apparently he went for these designs because a number of the members of his family had worked in the textile mills over in Paisley over the generations. So I think that's a really nice touch. And you know, my grandparents come from Paisley and Renfrew, actually, over that way. So yeah, for me it's quite cool to be able to review a beer from my grandparents' hometown. But they run a tap room at the brewery on weekends, and as of August 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, they've produced 30 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. And like I said to you earlier, they seem to be very well rounded. They've got quite a few different IPAs, there were some lagers in there as well, they've got stouts like this, and there are a few other things if you rake through that list on Untappd. So do have a little look at that list and just see what you can find. But yeah, I look forward to trying more different styles from these guys as we go forward. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about 2 Towns Down Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on then and have a wee look at the beer itself. So I'll just let you have a wee look at the artwork on the can then before we open this one up. There you can see this one has a kind of brown Paisley pattern on it in comparison to the sort of yellow and blue one that we had previously. I don't know if it's the colour in the background is meant to be like representative of the beer, because I think it was yellow on the New England IPA that we had in Honesty. But yeah, it tells you a little bit about the beer itself here. So it says this one, Will It Be This Way Forever? An American style stout showcasing a complex malt bill including Belgian biscuit malt, a full-bodied luscious stout with a burst of Centennial hops to bring balance to the full-on malt bill. And it contains barley, wheat and lactose. So this one should be a nice big creamy bugger actually. But there you can see the 2 Towns Down brewery symbol there, 2T and the D on its kind of side, which took me a little bit to realise in the last video, but now that you see it I think it is quite nice. Plain silver top on the can there. It's a 440 milliliter one this. But yeah, let's get it out into the glass and just see what it's all about. I think this one could be really quite interesting. So Will It Be This Way Forever, a 7% American style stout, or American stout, whatever we want to call it, from 2 Towns Down Brewing in Paisley over by Glasgow in Scotland. Let's do this. I honestly can't remember the last time that I drank a stout that was 7%. I've had a few porters at this strength. I think the last porter that I drank at that sort of strength was one from Kernel in London. So they're known for doing these more kind of old school porters and things like that. But yeah, an American stout at 7% isn't something I've come across in quite some time. So yeah, as I say, that was why this beer kind of caught my eyes when I bought it. But yeah, anyway, you can see that this beer is poured pretty much as you would expect from any stout, to be honest with you. So before the head disappears, we can see that this beer has a little bit less than a half finger of a frothy, I would say kind of fawn to medium tan coloured head there. It looks very, very nice actually. So you can see sort of medium-sized bubbles just on the surface of the liquid there, and a few foamier ones as you just go kind of further up. But you can see the beer has the colour you would expect of a stout. If we shine the light through this one, it does have a little bit of that kind of Coca-Cola, Pepsi Max sort of colour to it. 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones just going up toward the surface there, but the head has faded away to be a very thin foamy layer, and you've got that nice kind of thicker ring just around the edge of the glass there. But overall, it does look pretty damn nice, I have to say. But yeah, colour-wise, it's definitely that typical dark ebony rosewood colour that you would expect of a stout. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect your colour as well. But yeah, when it comes to black beers like stouts and things, it's actually very difficult to affect the colour of these beers with things like that. And you know, a 7% stout, you're not going to barrel age these ones, to be honest with you. But yeah, I think we don't need to say too much else about the appearance of this beer. There's not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this one. So yeah, let's move on to the aroma section and see what we have with this. This should be really quite interesting. I'm very curious about this Belgian biscuit malt, to be honest with you. So let's do this. Oh yeah, I have to say this smells really nice. In some ways, this beer does have a little bit of black IPA quality to it, so you do get a little bit more hoppiness out of this one, and the green component and the kind of fruitiness that you get out of this beer does make me wonder, especially the kind of citrusy nature of the fruit. It does make you think black IPA a little bit. So I need to check and see if these guys actually had done a black IPA. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, still, aroma-wise, this is lovely. Gives you everything you'd want from a kind of modern stout, if you like. There's a bit of graininess and roastiness in there. There's a good little bit of sweetness, and you also have a good little bit of kind of floral character to this one, and some nice fruitiness as well. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together, I think, is really quite nice actually. So it gets a big thumbs up from me in that particular regard. So yeah, it's good. Let's try and break this down though and just describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. So the backbone of this beer, you do have a little bit of that kind of roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust coming out of this one. The nature of the bread and the roasted bread crust makes me wonder if there's a bit of carafa in this one, just, you know, like German malt. Carafa, of course, is like a trademarked brand or malt sort, if you can call it that, of the Weyermann company in Bamberg in Franconia in northern Bavaria in Germany. There's just something really distinctive about these malts that I've kind of learned to pick up over the years. It's that kind of drier, bread crusty character. So you've got a little bit of roasty toastiness to this one, but then you also have a little bit of an almost kind of like really dry rye bready bread crust, and you can get that in this particular beer for sure. So yeah, I'll probably say that though and I'll be wrong. That's just kind of how it goes. But yeah, roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust in this one. You do have a nice little bit of, I would say, yeah, good little bit of a sort of rye bready kind of character. Yeah, good little bit of a kind of rye bready bread crust in this one. And then you've also got some really nice yeah, you've also got some really nice sort of like more caramelised rye bread sitting above that. So you've got the rye bready bread crust, the kind of more toasty, roasty, black malty characters in this one, the kind of more dry and slightly caramelised rye bread above that. Then you start to get a more kind of wholemeal brown bready character in the above that, and you get little bits of woody and nutty character just pushing their way out of the beer too. And then above everything else, you get a little touch of like, you get a little touch of a kind of chocolatey character out of this beer. So for me, the sort of chocolatey notes that you get out of this one are quite, how would you say? The chocolatey notes that you get out of this one are actually kind of dry. They give you that almost kind of cocoa nibby type vibe to them. So there's a little bit of a, I'd say if we're talking about the level of cocoa in this one, it comes across as being a sort of 60 or 70% cocoa type vibe. So yeah, 60-70% cocoa in this one. Not too dark, but not too light. And above that, above that kind of cocoa nib, you'll start to get more of a kind of brown sugary note out of this one. It's quite a toasty. It's quite a toasty brown sugar that you have in the base, but then you get an oily kind of sweeter caramelly note in the. You get a more oily kind of sweet caramelly note coming out of this beer. The further into the aftertaste you go, or the further into the aroma you go, I should say. Why am I saying aftertaste? I'm just used to that phrase. But yeah, on top of that, you do get a lot of biscuit with this one. So as I say, they're saying there's Belgian biscuit malt in this one. You do have a hell of a lot of biscuity character just coming out of it as well. So yeah, the way that the beer goes together in that particular sense is really nice too. So it gets a big thumbs up from me from the malty side of things. There's a lot of complexity to this, and I think we're going to get more out of that when we actually taste the beer. So yeah, it's going to be nice. But on the hoppy side of things, as I said earlier, the beer does have a little touch of like black IPA characteristic to it. Centennial, of course, it's a 12% alpha acid hop. It's American. When you use it in IPAs, it gives you quite a big lemony, zesty type character, and you do get a wee touch of that out of this beer. But certainly on the green component of this one, you get a little bit of earthiness there. I get quite a little bit of a floral note out of this one, and it's got a wee touch of resin, kind of like piney resin underneath it. So there's a bit of earthy and piney resin quality to this one. Some nice bright floral characters in there. Also a good little bit of grassiness coming out of the beer too. But then it is that kind of floral, and slightly piney note that makes me think, you know, it is more of a kind of black IPA than an American stout. And at 7% ABV, yeah, the whole idea behind a black IPA was basically to use a kind of more stout orientated malt base, and you know, just give it the same hopping as an IPA, and that's where the black IPA was born. But yeah, with this one you do get quite a little bit of a zesty, grassy character to this one, and the hops are kind of almost a little bit dominant in the aroma, to be honest with you. The malts almost take a little bit of a back seat to the green component in this beer, which is really interesting. But yeah, I like that. On the fruity side of things then, for me, the fruity side of the beer, you do get a little bit of that kind of lingering lemony, citrusy character that you would expect of the what you would expect of the Centennial hop. But behind that, you are getting little elements of red fruit as well. So for me, there's a little touch of there's a bit of a grapefruity note. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a wee bit of like Chinook or something in this beer as well. But yeah, there's a little bit of a kind of grapefruit. I do get a little touch of a kind of almost like grapefruity note out of this one. But then it's like oily fig, oily blackcurrant, and then yeah, you've just got that little bit of an almost lemony, citrusy character coming out from the Centennial in this one. So yeah, really interesting beer from that particular perspective when I think about it. But it gets a thumbs up from me. So yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think we should try this one now and see what it's all about. So let's put the rest of this out into the glass and see what we have. My first beer in a long time that's been called an American stout. But this one is the Will It Be This Way Forever, a 7% American stout from 2 Towns Down Brewing over in Paisley to the northwest of Glasgow. Yeah, looking forward to this because the last beer I had from these guys was pretty awesome. So let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Oh yeah, that's really nice. Yeah, this one, the sort of vibe that the beer has, it is very reminiscent. It does remind me quite a lot of Riptide from Brewdog, and like I say, that was one of my favourite Brewdog beers back in the day. But this one it's definitely a little bit more roasty and toasty than that was. Now I remember Riptide being quite a sweet stout, to be honest with you. But yeah, this is pretty damn nice, I have to say. It gets a big thumbs up from me. And what I've seen, even just with a few sips of this beer though, what I've seen from this beer and from my experiences of the brewery in general, is that these guys are, you know, Sandy McKelvey's obviously a very capable brewer. There's no two doubts in my mind about that. I've had a solid dark beer from him, I've had a solid IPA. Probably the only other thing I would need to try would be a lager. You know, try a lager from him. Maybe a kind of more brown sugary beer as well, or a sour too. These things would be quite interesting. But you know, if he can do an IPA, a New England IPA as well as he has, and a stout like this, then every confidence that the guy knows what he's doing. Safe to say. But yeah, this gets a thumbs up from me. It is like a slightly roasty, toasty version of the Riptide that I had from Brewdog back in the day when I was just getting into beers. But I think this is really nice. Very rare to find a 7% stout in Scotland these days, but this is good. This is awesome. So yeah, it gives you everything you'd want from the style. A bit of roastiness, a bit of smoothness, a little bit of sweetness. You've also got a wee bit of hoppiness and fruity character there. So we'll do as we always do. We'll break the beer down and just describe it a little bit more in depth for you, as we always like to do. So let's focus on that. So yeah, for me, the backbone of this beer, if we start in the middle third of the palate, as we always do, the backbone of the beer, you've got a little bit of that roasty, toasty, kind of well-fired morning roll, bread crusty character there. The way that that goes together is really nice. I am really wondering if there's a bit of carafa in this one, just because of the way it comes out. It has this dry, bread crusty character to it, and it's almost like slightly blackened but not overly blackened, and the little bit of almost rye bready character in this one is what makes me wonder if it is that one of those Weiermann carafa varieties that you can get. So yeah, roasty, toasty, medium well fired bread crusty character forming the base of the beer. As you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of woodiness coming out of this one. And then, yeah, as you go on top of that, as you go up to the next layer, you start to get some of the kind of rye bready notes out of the beer, which are really nice. Oh, you know, the beer has this lovely silkiness to it. You're going to see that right away with this one. It's got wheat and lactose in it, so it kind of makes sense. But yeah, above that kind of bread crusty layer, I do get a little layer of it's a very layered flavour you'll find in the middle third of your palate. So you do get a little bit of a kind of rye bready layer in there. Then above that, you have a slightly taller wholemeal brown bready layer as well. Within the wholemeal brown bready layer, you've got a little bit of nuttiness to it. But yeah, the way it goes together, I think, in that sense, is really nice. A little bit of a woody, nutty kind of character within that layer of the bread. And then above that, you start to get you get a little bit of chocolatey character coming out of this one. So yeah, you can feel at the back of that middle third of your palate, you've got a sort of 70 or 80% cocoa chocolate, but it's got an almost like charred chocolatey quality to it as well. But as you move further forward there, so yeah, you get a little bit of a, you do get a little bit more of a, you can feel that the chocolate gets gradually sweeter the further forward on the palate that you go. But remember, generally speaking with your palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back, sweeter flavours come out further forward. So yeah, 70-80% kind of charred chocolate, cocoa, kind of charred chocolate quality there on the back half of that middle third of your palate, and as you move further forward, you can feel it sort of mellows out, and as you reach the kind of front of that as you reach the kind of front of that middle third of your palate, you get a more milky chocolate type quality coming out of this one. So yeah, about 30-40% cocoa or something like that. But I do like that. So yeah, on top of the kind of cocoa-y type layer, yeah, on top of the kind of cocoa-y type layer, you get the brown sugars. You get the start of the brown sugars. So you've got a kind of roasty, toasty brown sugary layer in there. You've got a kind of circle in the middle of your palette there. So roasty, toasty kind of brown sugary layer there. Then above that you get a slightly more kind of leathery brown sugar almost. And then in the dead centre of the palette you do get a wee bit of an oily caramel, but it's quite a dry oily caramel I would say. So yeah, it is actually quite a dry stout, this one, as you move into the aftertaste. But you do have a lovely kind of silkiness when the liquid is actually on your palate, and that's probably due to the presence of the lactose and the wheat. The other thing that I do notice coming out a wee bit more into the aftertaste is that more kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity character, and I'm guessing that's the Belgian biscuit malt that's kind of giving you that quality. So yeah, you will see in the middle third of your palette that it's got quite a layered sort of feel to it, this one, but I do like how that pieces together for sure. So, for me, I think that's everything we need to say about the middle third of your palette in this beer. So yeah, we can go on to the back third of the palette then, and as I often say, the back third of your palette has a really similar, kind of flavour makeup, if you like, but the flavours just come out at different intensities. So that border region between middle and back third of your palette, you get a nice little bit of kind of bready build up in this one, a sort of rye bread in the base, and a more kind of wholemeal brown bread on top. And the base layer of that back third of the palette, really roasty, toasty, well fired bread crusty character in there. And then it feels a little bit drier than in the middle third of the palette, of course. Then you get this almost like kind of crackery layer. Then you get a more rye bread crusty layer. Then you get the rye bready layer, which feels a little bit lighter and more airy than in the middle third of the palette. And then you get, pardon me, the wholemeal brown bready layer above that, which is, which again is just quite light and airy. I'm getting a wee bit of gas out of this beer in my chest actually, which is a thing, maybe just because the beer's been sitting for a few months. But yeah, the bready layers that you get in the back third of the palette are really quite nice with this. But you can also feel a little bit of the kind of sort of cocoa nibby dryness just creeping over the top of the bread on that back third of the palette, and then you start to get the yeasty notes out of the beer. So yeah, the way that that goes together is really nice too. So yeah, the yeasty character in this beer then, above everything else then on that back third of the palette, you'll feel this nice kind of dense brown bready sort of character coming out of this one. So yeah, lovely nice kind of dense brown bready character. It's got a little bit of a kind of biscuity, like McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of character just wrapped around in it. So yeah, the way that comes out is really quite interesting too. But yeah, that more dense kind of brown bready and kind of sweet yeasty character there, it's just almost as if it's wrapped in a little bit of honeycomb. I always get honeycomb in the back third of the palette for some reason. But yeah, you've got wee bits of woody dryness and stuff and little bits of toastiness there. But as I say, that yeasty character sits above everything on the back third of your palette, and you can definitely feel that the back third of your palette, the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your palette, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. But yeah, I do like how that all kind of pieces together. So on the hoppy side of things then, I think we've said everything we need to about the malty side of this beer, but I do like how this goes together. As I say, lovely silky character to it. It really reminds me of Brewdog Riptide, but just a more roasty and toasty and dry version. But on the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palette, you've got a lovely little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, it's got a little bit of herbal character, and as you push toward the kind of front corners of the palette, you do get a little bit of floral character at this one. It's got nowhere near the same level of kind of piney resinous quality that I was talking about in the aroma earlier, but that really did give the impression, it did give a little bit of an almost black IPA impression, which was quite interesting. But round the front curve of your palette, you do get a little bit of a light, slightly wet grassiness out of this one. But yeah, there's no way this beer It does have a little bit more hoppy character than some stouts I've had before, but yeah, it's tasteful, if that makes sense. It is quite tastefully done in that regard, and it gives you a little bit more depth to the beer. But yeah, the green component's nice, let's just say that. So let's focus on the front third of your palate then. The border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of sort of bready build up in the beer. You can feel a little bit of rye bread underneath and a bit of a kind of wholemeal brown bread sitting on top of that. Then you've got the base of that front third of your palate, a little bit of the roasty toasty kind of well-fired bread crust there. The rye bread crust sits above that, and then you've got a mix of the rye bread and the wholemeal brown bread. Then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's look at those. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer I think is really quite nice. I almost get a little touch of orangey character out of this one. There is definitely a little bit of a kind of citrusy note to this beer. Like above the kind of bready character, you do just get this underlying kind of slightly lemony and orangey, citrusy character sitting there in the beer. But you do get the red fruits that you'd expect of a stout above that. But the citrusy note does linger into the aftertaste for this one. But let's look at the red fruity notes. So yeah, when you take the beer in, you do have this lovely, there's a little touch of plummy character to this one, and there's a wee bit of figgy note as well. But to be honest, I would be tempted to say that the majority of the fruit on that front third of your palate, it's really like blackcurranty for me. So I get a lot of blackcurrant out of this one, but then some of the citrusy notes just kind of push their way. They just kind of push their way up and out of the beer. So yeah, it's really interesting how everything just kind of pieces together in that particular regard. So yeah, sort of a citrusy layer in the base, a little bit of like plum at the back of that front third of your palate when you take the liquid in, wee bit of fig in the middle, but I get a lot of juicy kind of blackcurrant, you know, being the sort of forming the anchor of that front third of your palate. So yeah, interesting stuff. I do have to say the way this beer goes together I think is really interesting in that regard. But a beautifully done beer, this one. I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink this again. It has taken me a wee bit of time just to kind of get my head around it, because you don't find this style that often. But yeah, really good stuff. Very, very good stuff, I have to say. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the tasting section and just round off with the mouthfeel. So mouthfeel wise for me, this beer, it's kind of what you'd expect when you think about the style and the ABV. It's kind of pushing the top end of mid-bodied. The carbonation is very, very smooth. It has a little bit of a silkiness to it, and it gets a bit drier and more bitter the further into the aftertaste that you go. But yeah, in terms of IBUs, I would say that this beer is quite. It really is quite. It more gets drier and drier the further into the aftertaste that you go. There's probably about 50 or 60 IBUs in there, which is nice. So 50, 60 IBUs, lovely sort of, pardon me, smoothness underneath it. So in the malt base you get a bit of dryness and roastiness underneath, smoothness in the middle, and a little bit of a kind of sweeter character on top, which is great. Lovely dry kind of sweetness in there. A little bit of a hoppy bitterness, and also a wee bit of a wetter kind of fruity character coming out of this one. So yeah, the way it goes together I think is really quite nice. So it gets a thumbs up from me. Very impressed with this one, and I do look forward to trying a few other styles from this brewery, because I've been impressed with the two ends of the spectrum that I've tried so far. But I think we can leave it at that for this one. This has been really nice. So this was the Will It Be This Way Forever? I hope so. A 7% American stout from Two Towns Down Brewing over in Paisley, just to the kind of northwest of Glasgow. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this particular beer if you've tried it. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Two Towns Down Brewing are as well. and we will see about reviewing more from these guys in the future, because I have been impressed with the 2 beers that I've had from them, and yeah, as time goes on they will only get better. But thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out 2 Towns Down Brewing's social media, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and thanks for watching.